Breaking the silence, revolutionizing mental health in high-pressure professions. Imagine a world where talking about our mental health is as normal as discussing our physical health. A world where seeking help isn't seen as a weakness, but as a strength. This isn't just a dream, it's a necessity, especially for those who dedicate their lives to protecting and serving others. Today, I have the incredible opportunity to share with you some powerful insights I gained from interviewing Dr. Leslie Rogers, a remarkable psychologist and mental health advocate whose work has profoundly impacted countless lives, particularly those in high-pressure professions like first responders and veterans. Dr. Rogers' dedication to breaking the silence around mental health and creating safe spaces for healing is not just inspiring, it's revolutionary. Her tireless efforts are reshaping how we approach mental health, especially in fields where emotional resilience is often mistaken for emotional invulnerability. As I sat down with Dr. Leslie Rogers, I was struck by her unwavering commitment to this vision. Her words resonated with the truth that we often overlook in our fast-paced, high-pressure society. Mental health is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Think about that for a moment. How often do we prioritize our mental well-being? How often do we give ourselves permission to be vulnerable, to acknowledge our struggles, to seek help when we need it most? For many of us, the answer is not often enough. And for those in high-stress professions like first responders, military personnel, and frontline workers, the stakes are even higher. Dr. Rogers shared with me the harsh reality that many in these professions face. They're often caught in a cruel paradox. Their work demands emotional strength and resilience, yet the very nature of their jobs exposes them to trauma and stress that can chip away at their mental health. The expectation to be always strong, always ready, always in control can create a suffocating silence around their struggles. But here's the thing, silence doesn't equal strength. In fact, it's often the opposite. The true strength lies in having the courage to speak up, to reach out, to acknowledge that we're human and that sometimes we need help. This is where Dr. Rogers' work becomes so crucial. Through her private practice and her Men Suffer Too initiative, she's creating spaces where it's okay to not be okay, where vulnerability isn't seen as a liability, but as a pathway to healing and growth. Let's pause for a moment and really let that sink in. How revolutionary is the idea that it's okay to not be okay? In a world that often demands perfection, that pushes us to always put on a brave face. Admitting that we're struggling can feel like admitting defeat. But what if we flipped that narrative? What if we saw vulnerability not as weakness, but as courage? Dr. Rogers emphasized to me the importance of normalizing conversations around mental health. She painted a vision of a world where seeking mental health support is as routine and accepted as going to the doctor for a physical checkup. Imagine the impact this could have, not just on individuals, but on entire communities and professions. For those in high-pressure jobs, the stakes are particularly high. Post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, depression, moral injury. These aren't just clinical terms. They're real lived experiences that can profoundly impact a person's life and work. Yet, because of stigma, these issues often go unaddressed, silently eroding a person's well-being and ability to function. Let me share with you a story that Dr. Rogers told me, one that illustrates the profound impact of her work. There was a firefighter, let's call him John, who had been in the service for over 20 years. John had always prided himself on his toughness, his ability to face any situation head on. But after a particularly devastating fire where lives were lost, John found himself struggling. He couldn't sleep. He was irritable. And he started to withdraw from his family and colleagues. For months, John suffered in silence, believing that admitting he was struggling would make him appear weak, unfit for the job he loved. It wasn't until he attended one of Dr. Rogers' retreats that he finally found the courage to speak about what he was going through. In that safe space, surrounded by others who understood his experiences, John was able to start his journey towards healing. This story isn't unique. Dr. Rogers has countless examples of individuals who have found strength in vulnerability, who have rediscovered their resilience through connection and support. It's a powerful reminder that no one should have to face their battles alone. But it doesn't have to be this way. Dr. Rogers' work is proof that change is possible. Through her Men Suffer Too initiative, she's tackling head on the specific challenges that men face when it comes to mental health. In our society, men, especially those in traditionally masculine professions like law enforcement or firefighting, are often taught from a young age to man up and tough it out. These expectations can create a dangerous barrier to seeking help. Dr. Rogers shared with me how her retreats and support services are designed to break down these barriers. They provide a space where men can talk openly about their mental health without fear of judgment. It's a place where vulnerability is encouraged, where emotional pain is acknowledged, and where healing can begin. This focus on men's mental health is crucial. Too often, men's emotional struggles are overlooked or dismissed. The expectation to always be strong, to never show weakness, can be incredibly isolating. But strength isn't about never falling. It's about having the courage to get back up. And sometimes getting back up means reaching out for help. Dr. Rogers' work reminds us that resilience isn't about going it alone. It's about connection. It's about building a support network that can help us weather life's storms. In professions that demand constant vigilance and emotional toughness, this sense of connection can be a lifeline. Think about it. How many times have you felt alone in your struggles? How many times have you hesitated to reach out, fearing judgment or misunderstanding? Now imagine a world where you knew without a doubt that there were people ready to listen, to understand, to support you. That's the world Dr. Rogers is working to create. But her vision goes beyond just individual healing. It's about creating communities where mental health is openly discussed, where support is readily available, where no one has to face their battles alone. It's about collective healing, about growing stronger together. This idea of collective healing is powerful. It reminds us that we're all in this together, that our mental health isn't just a personal issue, but a societal one. When we support each other's mental health, we create stronger, more resilient communities. Dr. Rogers also emphasized the importance of self-care and preventative measures. It's not enough to address mental health issues after they become crises. We need to be proactive, to create systems and habits that promote mental wellness before problems arise. For those in high-stress professions, this could mean regular check-ins with a mental health professional. It could mean developing healthy coping strategies like mindfulness or physical exercise. It could mean learning to recognize the early signs of burnout or distress. The key is to make self-care a priority, not an afterthought. It's about treating our mental health with the same importance we give to our physical health. After all, our minds and bodies are interconnected. When we take care of our mental health, we're also investing in our overall well-being and our ability to perform at our best. But here's where it gets really interesting. Dr. Rogers pointed out that mental health isn't just an individual responsibility, it's a collective one. While it's crucial for individuals to seek support and prioritize their mental health, it's equally important for organizations to create environments that foster mental well-being. This is especially true in high-pressure fields like law enforcement, healthcare, and emergency services. These organizations need to provide accessible mental health resources, offer adequate time for rest and recovery, and create cultures where mental health struggles are viewed as normal and treatable. Imagine the impact if every workplace had a robust mental health support system, if leaders were educated about mental health and proactive in providing resources for their teams, if seeking help wasn't seen as a career risk but as a sign of professionalism and self-awareness. This systemic support is crucial. Without it, individual efforts may not be enough to mitigate the psychological toll that high-stress professions often carry. It's about creating a culture where mental health is valued at every level, from the individual to the organization to society as a whole. Dr. Rogers' vision challenges us to think bigger, to see mental health not just as a personal issue, but as a societal one, to recognize that when we support each other's mental health, we're creating stronger, more resilient communities and workforces. Let me share another powerful story from Dr. Rogers' work. There was a police officer, let's call her Sarah, who had been struggling with anxiety and depression for years. She was afraid to seek help, worried that it would jeopardize her career. But when her department implemented a new mental health program based on Dr. Rogers' recommendations, Sarah finally felt safe enough to reach out. The program provided confidential counseling services and peer support groups. For Sarah, it was life-changing. Not only did she get the help she needed, but she also found a community of colleagues who understood her struggles. Today, Sarah is not only thriving in her career, but she's also become an advocate for mental health within her department, helping to break down stigma and encourage others to seek help. Stories like Sarah's and John's are testaments to the power of creating environments where mental health is prioritized and supported. They show us what's possible when we break the silence and create spaces for healing. So where do we go from here? How do we take these insights and turn them into action? First, we start with ourselves. We give ourselves permission to prioritize our mental health, to seek help when we need it, to practice self-care, not as a luxury, but as a necessity. Next, we extend that care to others. Again, we create safe spaces for vulnerability and open conversations about mental health. We check in on our colleagues, our friends, our family members. We listen without judgment and offer support without conditions. For those in leadership positions, the challenge is to create environments that support mental health, to provide resources, to model healthy behaviors, to create cultures where seeking help is encouraged and supported. And for all of us, the challenge is to keep pushing for change, to keep having these conversations, to keep breaking down stigmas, to keep advocating for better mental health support in our workplaces and communities. Dr. Rogers' work reminds us that change is possible, that we can create a world where mental health is prioritized, where vulnerability is seen as strength, where no one has to face their struggles alone. Imagine a first responder who feels empowered to seek help after a traumatic event, knowing it won't jeopardize their career. Imagine a veteran who finds healing and connection through a support group, breaking free from the isolation of PTSD. Imagine a high-powered executive who models self-care for their team, creating a ripple effect of well-being throughout the organization. These aren't just feel-good stories. They're glimpses of a future we can create if we commit to prioritizing mental health. A future where we're not just surviving but thriving, where we're not just coping with stress but building resilience, where we're not just talking about mental health but actively nurturing it. As we come to the end of this talk, I want to leave you with a challenge, a call to action inspired by Dr. Leslie Rogers' transformative work. I challenge you to start a revolution, a mental health revolution. It begins with you right here, right now. First, I challenge you to break the silence in your own life. Share something you're struggling with someone you trust, or be that trusted person for someone else. Create a safe space for vulnerability and authentic connection. Remember, every time you open up, you're not just helping yourself, you're giving others permission to do the same. Second, I challenge you to become a mental health advocate in your community. Speak up against stigma. Support initiatives that promote mental well-being. If you're in a position of leadership, implement policies that prioritize mental health. If you're not, advocate for these policies. Be the change you want to see in how our society approaches mental health. Third, I challenge you to prioritize your own mental health unapologetically. Take a step towards self-care, whether that's scheduling a therapy appointment, starting a mindfulness practice, or simply taking a few minutes each day to check in with yourself. Remember, taking care of your mental health isn't selfish, it's necessary. It's how you show up as your best self for others. Fourth, I challenge you to educate yourself and others about mental health. Learn about the signs of mental health struggles. Understand the resources available in your community. Share this knowledge with others. The more we know, the better equipped we are to help ourselves and others. Finally, I challenge you to be patient and persistent. Change doesn't happen overnight. There will be setbacks and resistance. But remember, every conversation you have, every stigma you challenge, every time you prioritize your mental health or support someone else's, you're contributing to a monumental shift in how our society views and values mental health. Remember, mental health is not a luxury. It's not something we attend to only when we're in crisis. It's an essential part of our overall well-being, as important as our physical health. And just like physical health, it requires ongoing care, attention, and support. We have the power to create a world where mental health is prioritized, where vulnerability is valued, where seeking help is seen as a strength. A world where no one has to suffer in silence, where support is readily available, where we all have the tools and resources we need to thrive. This isn't just a dream, it's a possibility. And it starts with each of us. With every conversation we have, every step we take to prioritize our own mental health, every time we reach out to support someone else, we're moving closer to that reality. So let's take those steps. Let's have those conversations. Let's prioritize our mental health and support others in doing the same. Let's create a world where everyone has the support they need to not just survive, but to truly thrive. As Dr. Leslie Rogers has shown us, the path to mental well-being isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. And we don't have to walk that path alone. Together, we can create a future where mental health is not just talked about, but actively nurtured and supported. Your mental health matters. You matter. And together we can make a difference. Let's start today. Let's break the silence. Let's revolutionize mental health, not just in high pressure professions, but in every aspect of our lives. The revolution starts with you. Are you ready to join it? Thank you.